President Trump wrapping up his first address to Congress since returning to power. In moments, we're going to hear the Democratic response from Senator Elissa Slotkin of Michigan. But it was, in some ways, a campaign speech almost. Very, if one thinks that normally State of the Union addresses, joint addresses to Congress end up being kind of laundry lists of legislation that a president wants, this was quite different in many respects. He talked about tariffs. He talked about the border. He brought in some cultural issues. There were some touching moments with Americans, one getting into West Point, one who a 13-year-old suffering from brain cancer being made an honorary Secret Service agent.
Thank you very much.
It was disruptive what Congressman Al Green, Democrat of Texas, stood and yelled at the president and had to be escorted out. He, I believe, was saying that the president didn't have a mandate to get rid of Medicaid. Many Democrats made their displeasure with the president's speech known by walking out or holding up signs. The president went on an extended length talking about DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and alleged waste that was found in the Social Security system, in the USAID disbursements. I'm sure our fact checkers are looking into all of that right now. The president talked about reclaiming power from the bureaucracy. And he made some news, John King, talking about on April 2nd, that will be the day that reciprocal tariffs go into effect, that he wants to kill the CHIP Act, one of President Biden's biggest bipartisan agreements, and also that a top terrorist who was responsible for the Abbey Gate attack in 2021 in Afghanistan has been apprehended, at least in partnership with the government of Pakistan, and is on his way to the United States. John King, what was your thought?
It was trademark Trump. It was very partisan. It was very defiant. It was very focused on him. Parts of it were simply, forgive me, a parallel universe of things that are simply not true. He said he inherited a catastrophe from Joe Biden economically. He inherited the strongest economy in the world. There has potholes, but he inherited the strongest economy. But he said they've discovered hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud already. There's no proof of that. They've discovered some. They've cut some spending and found some things, but nowhere near the numbers he said. He did, interestingly, he didn't ask for patience, but he did say there would be disturbances. His number one mandate is to lower costs. Costs are not down in America. It's only 43 days in. It's not time to say, aha, it's his problem. But he blamed Joe Biden for the fact that prices were still up. But he did say there would be disturbances as tariff policies and other economic policies would go in. That you could translate into a bit of an appeal for patience, although he would never say it so ways. Another interesting moment to me was when he told Congress, essentially, he is very frustrated. He promised mass deportations in the campaign. Border crossings are down, but deportations are running about the same at the Biden level. And he told Congress, I need that money. I need money to do that, and I need it now. The biggest challenge, he can sign executive orders every day, but if he wants to get the big things done, like extend his tax cuts and do other big structural things, he needs a Congress which has one vote to spare in the House of Representatives to start doing things. And he put more pressure on them to act more quickly to send it his way. And he also included, again, traditionally this was a Republican idea, although it hasn't happened since Bill Clinton. He said, I want to balance the budget. Yeah. There is nothing on the table from the Republicans in Congress or the first Trump term, nothing on the table that comes anywhere close. We're landing on Mars is closer to us than balancing the budget.
We should also note that this is, if you include States of the Union and joint addresses to Congress, it's the same thing. Joint addresses to Congress is in the president's first year, and then after that, the State of the Union. This is the longest one in modern history. But before tonight, Bill Clinton, for 89 minutes, spoke in the year 2000. Donald Trump passed that, including the time of the disruption of Al Green, with 99 minutes. Dan Abash, what did you think of the Democratic response? He really, I've never heard a president attack the